There's a moment that separates the powerful from the powerless. It happens when someone attacks your character, questions your success, or accuses you of being ruthless, greedy, or out of touch. In that split second, the average person does what feels natural. They defend themselves, they explain their intentions, they justify their actions. But watch a billionaire in that same moment, and you'll see something different. Complete stillness, total silence. And that silence is not weakness, it's warfare. This is the brutal truth Machiavelli understood 5 centuries before the first billionaire ever existed. The moment you defend yourself, you've already lost. Because defending yourself admits something dangerous. It admits you believe their judgment has authority over you. And once you give someone that authority, they own you. Jeff Bezos doesn't explain why Amazon's business practices are ethical. Elon Musk doesn't justify why he bought Twitter. Warren Buffett doesn't defend his investment strategies to critics. They learn something the masses never will. Power isn't about being understood, it's about being untouchable. And the untouchable never explain themselves to those beneath them.
Let's decode the psychology behind this. When someone accuses you of something, they're not really looking for truth. They're testing your composure. They want to see if they can make you flinch, make you react, make you scramble for approval. It's a power probe. And the second you take the bait, you've told them everything they need to know. You're controllable. But billionaires understand something deeper. They know that in any interaction, there are only 2 positions: judge or defendant. The moment you start explaining yourself, you've accepted the role of defendant. You've agreed to stand trial in their court. And defendants, even innocent ones, always look guilty, because they're the ones doing the explaining. Watch how this plays out in real time. When Elizabeth Warren called out billionaires for not paying their fair share, did any of them release emotional statements explaining their tax strategies? Did they post long social media rants about how hard they work? No. They remained silent, and that silence forced the conversation to happen around them, not through them. They didn't defend their position. They made others defend or attack their position for them. This is what Machiavelli called controlling the frame. The frame is the context, the narrative, the lens through which events are viewed. Most people fight within the frame their accusers create. But the powerful, they either ignore the frame entirely or flip it completely. They understand that whoever sets the frame controls the outcome. Think about Bill Gates during the Microsoft antitrust trials. He didn't spend press conferences explaining why monopolies are good for innovation. He appeared calm, collected, almost bored by the accusations. His demeanor said something louder than words ever could. This is beneath me. And that attitude, that untouchable composure, actually made him more formidable, not less. This is the psychological mechanism at work. When you don't defend yourself, you create what psychologists call cognitive dissonance in your accusers. They expected a reaction. They expected you to fight back, to get emotional, to validate their attack by responding to it. When you don't, their brain struggles to process it. They start questioning themselves. Why didn't he react? Does he know something I don't? Am I the one who looks foolish here? This is the power reversal Machiavelli wrote about. The accused becomes the accuser without saying a word. Your silence makes them uncomfortable. Your composure makes them look emotional by comparison. Your stillness makes them appear desperate for attention. You flipped the script without lifting a finger. But there's a deeper level to this strategy. Billionaires understand that mystery is more powerful than explanation. When you explain yourself, you give people a complete picture. They can categorize you, predict you, dismiss you. But when you remain silent, when you let accusations hang in the air without response, you become mysterious. And mystery breeds respect, fear, and fascination. Look at how Steve Jobs operated. When critics said Apple products were overpriced, when competitors accused him of being a control freak, when employees called him demanding, he never issued statements defending his character. He let the product speak. He let the results speak. He understood that actions carry weight, but explanations make you look weak. The billionaire's silence serves another strategic purpose. It forces others to fill the vacuum. When you don't defend yourself, people start doing it for you. Supporters emerge from the woodwork. That was unfair. He doesn't deserve that criticism. Look at what he's accomplished. Suddenly, you have an army of defenders, and you never asked for a single one. That's leverage money can't buy. This principle extends beyond public relations into business negotiations. When someone questions a billionaire's offer, calls their terms unreasonable, or suggests they're being greedy, they don't counter with justifications, they wait. They let the silence create pressure. They understand that the person who speaks first in a negotiation often loses, and the person who explains their position reveals their desperation. Warren Buffett exemplifies this perfectly. When people question Berkshire Hathaway's investment decisions, he doesn't release defensive statements. He doesn't explain his reasoning to critics. He simply says, "Time will tell." 3 words that carry more authority than 3,000 words of explanation, because those 3 words say something profound. I don't answer to you. But here's where it gets more sophisticated. The most successful billionaires don't just ignore criticism, they invert it. When someone calls them ruthless, they don't deny it. They reframe ruthlessness as focus. When someone calls them greedy, they don't apologize. They reframe greed as ambition. They take what was meant as an attack and turn it into a strength, without ever defending the original accusation.
Elon Musk is masterful at this. When critics call him reckless for his Mars colonization plans, he doesn't defend the feasibility of the project. Instead, he positions the criticism as small thinking. Some people dream of electric cars, others dream of space travel. He's not defending his vision, he's making the critics look unambitious by comparison. This is what Machiavelli called turning the blade. Don't meet the sword with a shield. Let the attacker fall on their own weapon. When you reframe criticism as jealousy, opposition as fear, and attacks as validation of your power, you've weaponized their aggression against them. The silent strategy also works because it demonstrates abundance mindset. When you defend yourself, you're operating from scarcity. You're worried about losing reputation, losing approval, losing perceived value. But when you remain unmoved by criticism, you signal abundance. You have so much value, so much success, so much certainty in your position that external opinions cannot shake you. This psychological principle runs deeper than business. It touches the core of human hierarchy. In any social structure, the person at the top doesn't justify their position to those below them. Kings don't explain their royal bloodline to peasants. CEOs don't defend their salaries to entry-level employees. And billionaires don't justify their wealth to people who will never accumulate it. The moment you start explaining yourself to someone, you've placed them above you in the hierarchy. You've granted them judge status while accepting defendant status for yourself. And hierarchies, once established, are very difficult to reverse. Consider how Mark Zuckerberg handles congressional hearings. He doesn't get emotional. He doesn't passionately defend Facebook's policies. He answers questions with technical precision, maintaining the frame that he's the expert in the room, not the accused. His demeanor says, "I'm here as a courtesy, not because I have to be."
But the deepest level of this strategy involves understanding what criticism really reveals. When someone attacks a billionaire's success, they're not really critiquing business practices. They're expressing their own limitations. The attack says more about the attacker than the attacked. And billionaires know this. They let critics expose their own jealousy, their own insecurities, their own failures, without saying a word. This is why the phrase, "haters gonna hate," became popular among successful people. It acknowledges a fundamental truth. Criticism often comes from people who couldn't achieve what you've achieved. And when you understand that, you don't feel compelled to defend against it. You see it for what it really is: validation of your success. The billionaire's refusal to defend themselves also serves as a filtering mechanism. It separates serious players from emotional reactors. People who matter in their world understand the game. They don't expect explanations or justifications. They focus on results, not rhetoric. The people who demand explanations reveal themselves as not serious, not worth engaging with. This creates what psychologists call a status cascade. The more you refuse to defend yourself, the more people assume you don't need to. The more people assume you don't need to, the more authority you accumulate. The more authority you accumulate, the less anyone expects you to explain yourself. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle of power. But there's a dangerous truth here that most people miss. This strategy only works when you have genuine power to back it up. When billionaires remain silent in the face of criticism, they can afford to because their results speak louder than their words. Their companies, their innovations, their wealth creation validate their approach without explanation. This is why Machiavelli emphasized that power must precede perception. You can't fake untouchable status. You have to build it through competence, through results, through demonstrated value. The silent strategy amplifies existing power. It doesn't create power from nothing. The digital age has made this strategy even more critical. Social media has democratized criticism. Anyone with a keyboard can attack anyone with a platform. But billionaires understand something about digital warfare that most people don't. The platform gives you the advantage only if you don't use it defensively. When Jeff Bezos faced criticism about Amazon warehouse conditions, he didn't flood social media with defensive posts. When Tim Cook deals with privacy concerns about Apple, he doesn't engage in Twitter debates with critics. They understand that digital platforms amplify weakness faster than they amplify strength. The attention economy rewards controversy, not truth. When you defend yourself online, you're feeding the algorithm that thrives on conflict. You're giving your critics exactly what they want: engagement. But when you remain silent, when you don't take the bait, the controversy dies from lack of fuel. This principle extends to how billionaires handle media interviews. Watch any interview with a top-tier billionaire when they're asked uncomfortable questions. They don't get defensive. They don't rush to clarify misconceptions. They either redirect the conversation to their vision, or they give non-answers so calm and collected that the interviewer looks aggressive by comparison. Ray Dalio exemplifies this during media appearances. When journalists try to corner him about Bridgewater's culture or his personal management style, he doesn't defend or justify. He speaks about principles, about systems, about long-term thinking. He never accepts the frame that he's someone who needs to explain himself. The boardroom is where this strategy becomes most surgical. When other executives challenge a billionaire's decisions, question their strategies, or suggest alternative approaches, the untouchable doesn't engage in detailed defenses. They might ask clarifying questions, they might probe the challenger's assumptions, but they never justify their position as if it needs validation.
This creates a fascinating dynamic. The more secure someone appears in their position, the less others feel comfortable challenging it. It's a psychological loop. Confidence creates respect, which creates space, which creates more confidence. But defensiveness creates doubt, which creates more challenges, which creates more defensiveness. Larry Ellison demonstrates this perfectly in Oracle board meetings and public appearances. When people question his aggressive business tactics or his lifestyle choices, he doesn't explain himself. He might make a brief statement about results or vision, but never a defense. His attitude communicates something deeper. I don't need your approval to operate at this level. The wealth accumulation game itself rewards this psychological stance. When you're building businesses, making investments, or entering new markets, second-guessing yourself based on external criticism is costly. Billionaires learn early that external validation is a luxury they can't afford if they want to operate at speed and scale. Consider how differently billionaires handle failure compared to regular people. When a billionaire's company fails, when an investment doesn't work out, when a public prediction proves wrong, they don't spend energy explaining what happened or defending their process. They analyze privately, adjust internally, and move forward publicly. Richard Branson exemplifies this approach. Virgin has had numerous business failures over the decades. But Branson doesn't spend time in interviews defending past decisions or explaining what went wrong. He talks about learning, about the next venture, about the vision ahead. The past failures become invisible because he doesn't give them attention or energy. This ties into a deeper Machiavellian principle about time and attention. Your attention is your most valuable resource. When you spend it defending past decisions or explaining current positions, you're not spending it on future opportunities. Billionaires understand this trade-off instinctively. The legal arena provides another perfect example of this strategy in action. When billionaires face lawsuits, regulatory challenges, or congressional investigations, they don't personally engage in public defenses. They hire the best lawyers, let the legal process handle the technical details, and maintain personal distance from the defensive aspects. When Zuckerberg testified before Congress about Facebook's practices, his approach was clinical, not emotional. When Bezos faced antitrust scrutiny, he appeared at hearings but didn't engage in passionate defenses of Amazon's business model. They understood that the moment they get emotional or defensive, they lose the psychological high ground. The ultimate expression of this strategy is what psychologists call strategic ambiguity. Billionaires often speak in ways that are precise enough to be credible, but vague enough to avoid creating new attack vectors. They understand that specificity gives critics ammunition, while principled vagueness makes them harder to pin down. This connects to another crucial element, the power of selective engagement. Billionaires don't treat all criticism equally. They ignore noise but address serious challenges from serious players. This discrimination itself sends a message about their position in the hierarchy. Your criticism has to meet a certain threshold to merit any response at all. Warren Buffett's annual letters to shareholders demonstrate this perfectly. He addresses legitimate concerns from investors and analysts, but he never acknowledges or responds to random criticism from media pundits or social media personalities. The selection process itself communicates his position in the financial hierarchy. The networking and relationship aspect of this strategy is equally important. Billionaires surround themselves with people who understand the game. Their inner circles don't expect explanations or justifications for decisions. This creates an environment where the default is trust and respect, not skepticism and demands for proof. This environmental factor reinforces the psychological stance.
When you're constantly around people who expect you to defend yourself, you develop defensive habits. But when you're around people who assume your competence, who trust your judgment, who understand that explanation is a luxury, not a necessity, you develop different habits. The generational aspect of this strategy is fascinating to observe. Old money families understand this instinctively. They've been trained from childhood never to explain their position, never to justify their inheritance, never to defend their lifestyle choices. They operate from a baseline assumption of their own legitimacy. New money billionaires often have to learn this lesson the hard way. Early in their wealth accumulation, they might still feel the need to explain themselves, to prove their worth, to justify their success. But the most successful ones eventually transcend this need and adopt the old money psychological stance. The final element of billionaire psychology is time horizon. They think in decades, not days. They understand that defending yourself provides temporary relief but long-term weakness. Every time you explain yourself, you train people to expect explanations. You condition them to believe they have the right to judge you. Over time, this erodes your authority systematically. But when you consistently refuse to defend yourself, you train people differently. You teach them that your decisions are final, your position is secure, and their approval is irrelevant. This conditioning creates psychological distance that translates into respect, fear, and ultimately, power.
The masses will never understand this strategy because they're trapped in the need for approval. They measure their worth by external validation. They need others to like them, understand them, approve of them. But billionaires have transcended that need. They've moved beyond the court of public opinion into a realm where only results matter. This transcendence isn't just psychological, it's practical. When you have enough resources, enough options, enough independence, external approval becomes less critical to your survival and success. This creates a feedback loop where financial independence enables psychological independence, which enables better decision-making, which creates more financial success. The ultimate Machiavellian insight about billionaire psychology is this: it's better to be feared than loved, but it's better to be irrelevant to criticism than either. When you reach a level where accusations simply don't register, where attacks bounce off without leaving a mark, where your silence carries more weight than most people's speeches, you've achieved something beyond wealth. You've achieved immunity, that untouchable status that allows you to operate in spaces where others fear to go, to make decisions others wouldn't dare make, to pursue visions others couldn't imagine. This immunity isn't just about protecting what you have. It's about creating the psychological space necessary to build what others can't. And that immunity, that untouchable status, that ability to remain unmoved in the face of any attack, is what separates those who accumulate billions from those who merely dream of millions. They understand that defending yourself is a luxury they can't afford, because in the brutal mathematics of power, explanation equals weakness, and the weak don't build empires. This is why billionaires never defend themselves, not because they're cold or callous, but because they understand what most people never will. The game is won in the mind before it's won in the market, and in the mind game, silence is the ultimate weapon.